want to thank everyone for being here on this occasion of the 31st vote in the United States, in the UN, to condemn the United States for its inhumane, unjust, and cruel embargo against Cuba. And for over three decades, the world has been demanding that the U.S. end its embargo of Cuba. Again, my name is Dan Dale, and I am a former board member of the Chicago Religious Leadership Network on Latin America, also a former board member of Pastors for Peace, who has spent a lot of time working in Cuba as well. CRLN, with our faith partners in Cuba, has been calling and struggling for an end to the U.S. embargo, the U.S. blockade against Cuba since the 90s. We join faith leaders around the world in calling for an end to the U.S. blockade. The World Council of Churches, the National Council of Churches, and most of the national denominational structures have all called for an end to the U.S. blockade of Cuba for decades. Since the 90s, CRLN has taken delegations to Cuba to see the reality of the life in Cuba, the wonderful achievements of the revolution, and to see the harm and cruelty caused by the embargo against the Cuban people. We have also hosted delegations of religious leaders from Cuba here in Chicago and throughout the United States. One of the religious leaders from Cuba that I had the privilege of hosting in my home, Clara Rodes, pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Havana, amazing woman, pastor, and eloquent spokesperson for Cuban sovereignty and the rights of the Cuban people to determine their own future. It was a privilege to see her in Cuba at Ebenezer Baptist Church and to host her in my home. A few years after she was in my home, she needed an organ transplant, and she had a successful operation, but the medicine that was needed for her her body to adapt to her organ was unavailable because of the U.S. embargo, and she died.
Right.
My friend, my colleague, Clara, was murdered by my government. Her death is a direct result of our government refusing to allow the Cuban people to determine their own destiny, to have access to medicine, to all of the things that they need to build their economy. So neither I nor CRLN will ever stop struggling to end this immoral, inhuman, cruel blockade of Cuba. Clara Rodes, presente.
Presente.